What if I told you that you could reset your brain, enhance your memory, boost your focus, and reduce stress, all in just 20 minutes? No pills, no coffee, no sleep, just deep rest. I'm not here to give you hype. I'm here to give you a tool, backed by neuroscience, that elite performers, athletes, and top thinkers are using daily. It's called NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, and in the next few minutes, you'll understand why 20 minutes of this practice might be the most valuable investment you can make in your brain and body today. Non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR, is a term that might sound counterintuitive at first. After all, how can one achieve deep rest without actually sleeping? But this is where modern neuroscience offers something both fascinating and profoundly useful. NSDR refers to a specific deliberate practice that allows the brain and body to enter a deeply restorative state, similar in many ways to the early stages of sleep, without ever losing consciousness. It's a waking rest, but one that's structured, intentional, and neurologically beneficial. The beauty of NSDR lies in its ability to bridge the gap between being fully awake and deeply asleep, creating a unique state where the brainwaves slow down, stress hormones decrease, and the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, takes the lead. What actually happens during NSDR is that the brain transitions from high-frequency beta waves associated with alertness and problem-solving to slower alpha and even theta waves, which are typically seen during light sleep or deep meditation. This slowing of brain activity doesn't mean the brain is shutting down, quite the opposite. It's entering a state where neural repair, memory consolidation, and emotional processing can occur more efficiently. Unlike sleep, which is passive and largely unconscious, NSDR is an active technique. The individual remains awake and aware, often guided through breathwork, body scans, or visualizations that gently nudge the nervous system into this calm and regenerative state. From a biological standpoint, this is a powerful tool. When we're constantly engaged with work, screens, conversations, and decisions, our sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight system, is chronically activated. This leads to elevated cortisol, mental fatigue, emotional reactivity, and physical tension. NSDR acts as a reset button. It quickly reduces cortisol levels, slows heart rate, and lowers blood pressure. In this relaxed but alert state, the brain enters a phase of heightened neuroplasticity, meaning it's more capable of forming new neural connections, absorbing information, and letting go of unnecessary stress patterns. One of the most exciting aspects of NSDR is its accessibility. Unlike traditional sleep, which requires time, an appropriate environment, and the right physiological conditions, NSDR can be practiced in nearly any quiet setting during a break in your day. You don't need to fall asleep. In fact, the goal is to remain aware but deeply relaxed. Even short NSDR sessions, as brief as 10 or 20 minutes, can restore energy, improve focus, and boost mood. It's like giving your brain a spa treatment, except it's free, science-backed, and available to you at any time. The origins of NSDR draw upon ancient practices such as yoga nidra and modern techniques like clinical hypnosis, but what makes it different is the intention behind it. It's not about escaping reality or zoning out. It's about entering a controlled restorative state where your brain and body can recalibrate. Neuroscientists, including those studying brain performance at Stanford and MIT, have found that this kind of rest improves task switching, enhances working memory, and accelerates motor learning. Athletes use it after training. Entrepreneurs use it between high-stakes meetings. Students use it after study sessions to lock in information more effectively. Ultimately, NSDR is more than just a technique. It's a gateway to resilience. In a world that constantly demands attention, speed, and output, this practice teaches us that deliberate stillness can be just as powerful as action. It's the strategic pause that prepares you for your next burst of energy, creativity, or performance. And the best part is, once you understand how to access this state, you carry it with you, a built-in recovery tool, hardwired into your nervous system, ready to be activated at will. The power of NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, lies in its foundation in rigorous neuroscience. This isn't just another wellness trend or self-help hack. It is rooted in well-established principles of how the brain and body function, recover, and perform at their best. When we talk about NSDR being scientifically powerful, we're referring to its measurable impact on key biological systems, hormonal regulation, neurotransmitter balance, neuroplasticity, and autonomic nervous system control. Each of these systems plays a critical role in how we think, feel, learn, and operate in daily life. One of the most immediate and profound effects of NSDR is its ability to reduce cortisol levels. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, is essential in small amounts. It helps us wake up, stay alert, and respond to threats. But chronic elevation of cortisol, which is incredibly common in today's overstimulated world, leads to anxiety, brain fog, insomnia, and even physical damage to neurons in the hippocampus, the brain's memory center. NSDR interrupts this cycle. By shifting the body into a parasympathetic state, it effectively turns down the volume on the stress response. The hypothalamic pituitary adrenal HPA axis, which regulates cortisol production, becomes less reactive. As a result, within minutes of beginning an NSDR session, individuals often report feeling calmer, more grounded, and mentally clearer. But NSDR doesn't just lower stress, it also enhances dopamine regulation. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter commonly associated with motivation, pleasure, and focus. What's fascinating is that NSDR, especially when practiced regularly, can increase baseline dopamine levels, the steady state from which peaks of excitement or engagement occur. A higher baseline means you're more motivated and more capable of sustaining attention and drive throughout the day. It's not about chasing highs or momentary boosts. It's about resetting the system so it functions optimally without external stimulation. Studies in both animals and humans have shown that practices similar to NSDR, including deep relaxation protocols and guided hypnosis, can improve dopamine tone, making the brain more responsive and efficient. Another crucial benefit of NSDR is its enhancement of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize and form new neural connections. Neuroplasticity is fundamental to learning, memory consolidation, habit formation, and recovery from mental fatigue. During NSDR, the brain shifts into a mode where it becomes more malleable. The neural circuits involved in tasks you've practiced earlier, whether learning a language, developing a skill, or working through emotional experiences, are more likely to be strengthened during this period of rest. This is because the brain uses downtime to integrate and solidify information, especially when it's not being bombarded with new stimuli. In fact, some studies have shown that a session of NSDR after learning can enhance retention and understanding of new material by a significant margin, comparable to the benefits of an additional night's sleep. NSDR also affects the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary functions like heart rate, respiration, digestion, and arousal. Most people operate under a dominance of the sympathetic nervous system, the state of alertness and tension. This is necessary when you're in motion, solving problems, or facing deadlines. But when that state becomes constant, it leads to burnout. NSDR brings the system back into balance by activating the parasympathetic branch, the one responsible for calm rest and restoration. Through controlled breathing, body awareness, and focused relaxation, NSDR guides the nervous system into a state where healing, digestion, and cellular repair can occur. What makes NSDR particularly exciting from a scientific perspective is how quickly these changes occur and how long they can last. Unlike medications, which may take weeks to show results and often come with side effects, NSDR shows benefits within a single session, and those benefits compound over time. Regular practitioners often report improvements in focus, emotional resilience, creativity, and sleep quality, even if they're only practicing for 20 minutes a few times per week. Functional MRI scans of individuals engaging in deep rest practices reveal decreased activity in the default mode network, the brain system associated with rumination and overthinking, and increased activity in areas linked to executive function and self-regulation. In short, NSDR is a neuroscientific tool that speaks directly to the needs of the modern brain. It's a way of reclaiming mental bandwidth, reducing inflammation in the nervous system, and enhancing the chemical and electrical environment in which your thoughts, actions, and emotions arise. The beauty is in its simplicity: no devices, no drugs, no fancy setups, just you, your breath, your attention, and a protocol that is scientifically validated to reset and recharge your most vital systems. It's not just rest. It's strategic recovery that transforms the way your brain and body perform, think, and feel. The 20-minute protocol for non-sleep deep rest is one of the most powerful, time-efficient tools available to anyone looking to enhance cognitive function, reduce stress, and promote recovery both mentally and physically. At the heart of this protocol lies a simple but profound idea. You don't need hours of sleep to reset your system. Just 20 minutes of focused, intentional rest can deliver many of the neurological and physiological benefits that would otherwise take much longer to achieve through traditional means. This protocol is not random. It's been refined and validated through studies in neuroscience labs, clinical practice, and real-world performance environments. In those 20 minutes, the body enters a deeply relaxed state where the sympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for alertness, stress, and action, gradually powers down, allowing the parasympathetic system, the one responsible for rest, digestion, and repair, to take over. This shift is not something you simply wish into existence. It's facilitated through a structured approach that often includes breath control, guided awareness of the body, and deliberate disengagement from external stimuli. These elements work in concert to quiet the mind, reduce internal noise, and allow the body to enter a state that mirrors the early stages of sleep, yet without the full descent into unconsciousness. Most NSDR protocols begin with a focus on breathing. This isn't just to calm the mind, it's to send a physiological signal to the brainstem that the environment is safe, that there is no immediate threat, and that it's okay to let go. Slow, rhythmic breathing, particularly when the exhale is longer than the inhale, is known to increase vagal tone, enhancing the parasympathetic response. From there, the practitioner is usually guided through a body scan or a progressive muscle relaxation sequence. This further reduces muscular tension, lowers heart rate, and facilitates a drop in brainwave frequency from beta, alert and active, to alpha, and even theta, associated with meditative and dreamlike states. The magic of the 20-minute mark lies in how the brain processes time and recovery. Neuroscientific studies have shown that it takes around 15-20 minutes for the full cascade of relaxation and neural recalibration to occur. This is not merely about closing your eyes and resting. It's about entering a state where the brain can actually begin to rewire itself. In this state, the glymphatic system, which is responsible for clearing out metabolic waste from the brain, becomes more active. This contributes to improved clarity, better emotional regulation, and enhanced memory consolidation following the session. Importantly, the benefits of this practice aren't only observed in people dealing with high stress or sleep deprivation. Even those operating at high levels, top athletes, surgeons, musicians, CEOs, use this 20-minute window as a form of recovery and performance enhancement. It's a tool for everyone, regardless of profession, age, or background. Whether you're mentally exhausted from problem solving or emotionally taxed from interpersonal stress, these 20 minutes offer a measurable reset. It's also worth noting that the body and brain become more efficient at entering this state the more you practice. The first few sessions may feel unfamiliar, and your mind might resist the process. But with consistency, the nervous system begins to recognize the cues and adapt quickly, entering the deep rest state with greater ease. This means the return on investment actually increases over time. Your 20 minutes becomes even more potent as your brain learns how to respond to the cues more effectively. People often ask whether it has to be exactly 20 minutes, and the answer is nuanced. While even a 10-minute session can offer some benefits, the 20-minute window seems to be the sweet spot where the most consistent physiological and cognitive changes occur. Less than that might relax you, but won't allow enough time for deep recovery. More than that, and you may drift into light sleep, which changes the nature of the practice. The goal is not to fall asleep, but to hover in that liminal space, fully relaxed yet mentally aware. That's the unique signature of NSDR and the reason it stands apart from naps or traditional meditation. What makes this protocol particularly elegant is that it requires nothing but time and intention. There are no tools, no substances, no technology barriers. You can do it lying on a yoga mat, sitting in a reclined chair, or even resting on a park bench with your eyes closed and headphones on. You can use a guided script, or eventually internalize the process and guide yourself. The accessibility of it means there are no excuses. This isn't about waiting until the weekend or going to a retreat. It's about weaving a scientifically backed, deeply regenerative practice into the fabric of your daily life. The 20-minute NSDR protocol is not just a pause, it is a recalibration. It is an act of deep internal maintenance. And in a world that constantly pushes us to do more, be more, and never stop, the ability to deliberately stop for just 20 minutes may be the most high-performance decision you can make. In an age where time is scarce and cognitive overload is common, This distinction is everything. NSDR fills a critical gap between the mental training of meditation and the passive restoration of sleep. It offers a third way, a conscious, scientifically grounded path to restoration that fits into even the busiest schedules. Understanding this difference is what allows us to fully appreciate and integrate NSDR into our lives, not as a replacement for meditation or sleep, but as a uniquely powerful complement to both. One of the most compelling aspects of non-sleep deep rest is its remarkable accessibility. In a world where many powerful health tools are locked behind barriers, whether it's the cost of therapy, the time commitment of long meditation retreats, or the complexity of neurofeedback devices, NSDR stands out as something that is not only scientifically validated, but also freely available to anyone, anywhere, at any time. It doesn't require any specialized equipment. There are no subscriptions, no pills, no physical exertion involved. It doesn't demand a quiet mountain retreat or an hour-long block in your day. You don't need to be a monk or a neuroscientist to use it effectively. All you need is 20 minutes, a quiet space, and a willingness to follow along with a simple protocol. This simplicity is one of its greatest strengths. Many interventions in mental and physical health require a long lead time before benefits appear. NSDR, by contrast, works immediately. The body begins to shift into a parasympathetic state within minutes of starting the practice. The breath slows down, heart rate decreases, stress hormones begin to taper off, and brainwave activity shifts from high-frequency beta waves to slower, calmer alpha and theta rhythms. These changes are measurable in real time, and even someone with no prior experience can begin to feel the difference from the very first session. And because it's guided, there's no guesswork. You don't have to figure it out on your own, or rely on vague instructions. You can use audio tracks, some just 10 to 20 minutes long, that walk you through the entire experience. These guided sessions typically begin with breath awareness and body scanning, which act as gateways to calm the nervous system. As you progress through the session, the external voice gives your mind just enough to focus on so that it doesn't wander, but not so much that you feel mentally burdened. This guided aspect is particularly helpful for people who find traditional meditation challenging, because the structure removes the pressure to do it right. You simply follow the voice, allow yourself to settle, and let the process unfold. The portability of NSDR also means you can fit it into virtually any lifestyle. You can practice it in the morning before starting your day to clear mental fog. You can do it in the afternoon during a break to reset your focus and energy. You can use it in the evening to transition from the demands of the day into a calmer, more reflective state. It can be done lying down on a couch, reclining in a car during a work break, or even in bed. You don't need a yoga mat, incense, or silence, just a willingness to pause and listen. This kind of availability is rare for tools with such profound effects. It means that people in high-pressure jobs, people raising children, people with anxiety, or those going through burnout can all have access to a scientifically supported form of recovery without waiting for an ideal circumstance. It democratizes the ability to restore and reset the brain and body. The fact that it's so easy to do means there's virtually no friction, no logistical or emotional resistance to getting started. That ease of access increases the likelihood of consistent practice, and consistency is where the magic truly happens. With repeated use, the brain and nervous system begin to associate the practice with calm and restoration. Neuroplasticity means that with every session, the brain becomes more efficient at entering the NSDR state. Over time, the benefits deepen. People report needing less time to recover from stress, sleeping better at night, focusing more easily during the day, and even handling difficult emotions with greater resilience. And all of that begins with the decision to take a brief pause and follow a simple, accessible script. In a culture that equates productivity with constant motion, NSDR flips the script. It offers a way to become more productive, not by doing more, but by deliberately doing less, by recovering, recharging, and resetting in short, manageable intervals. And because it's so accessible, it removes the excuse that rest is a luxury. With NSDR, rest becomes a choice, a powerful, available, and scientifically sound choice you can make anytime, without cost, without tools, and without waiting for the perfect moment. It's within reach, always. Non-sleep deep rest has a profound influence on learning and memory consolidation, and this is one of the most exciting frontiers in neuroscience and behavioral science. When we think about learning, whether it's acquiring a new language, Mastering a musical instrument, studying for an exam, or refining a physical skill like hitting a tennis ball or performing a dance routine, we often focus entirely on the effortful phase, the repetitions, the practice, the drills. And while those are critical, what happens after the learning session is equally, if not more, important. The brain doesn't simply absorb new information in real time. It requires time and the right neurochemical environment to store, stabilize, and integrate that information into long-term memory. This is where NSDR becomes an incredibly powerful tool. After intense focus or learning, the brain enters a heightened state of plasticity. This means that the neural circuits that were just activated are now more malleable, they're more likely to change, grow, and strengthen. But these changes don't solidify unless the brain is given an opportunity to reconfigure itself. Traditionally, this happens during sleep, particularly in deep and REM stages, when the brain replays the day's experiences in compressed bursts and rewires itself accordingly. However, sleep is not always immediately accessible, especially in the middle of a busy day. And more importantly, sleep alone may not always optimize the consolidation of very recent efforts if there's a long gap before rest occurs. NSDR fills this critical gap. When practiced within a window of time following intense learning or training, it creates a brain state that mimics some of the same conditions found in early sleep. The brain waves shift, the default mode network quiets down, and the autonomic nervous system calms. This allows the brain to begin consolidating the neural patterns it has just formed, making the new learning more robust and resilient. In simple terms, it's as if NSDR provides a short, efficient bridge between effort and retention, a dedicated processing period that solidifies what was just practiced without the need to fall asleep. For example, let's say you spend an hour trying to memorize a complex set of facts or practicing a motor skill. Immediately following that, if you engage in 20 minutes of NSDR, the brain begins to sort through what you've just done, reinforcing synaptic pathways and strengthening the connections involved. You're not actively rehearsing the material, but the brain is. It's doing so below the level of conscious awareness, and that's part of the beauty of NSDR. It allows your mind to rest while your brain continues to work in an optimal behind-the-scenes fashion. Research supports this mechanism. Studies using EEG and fMRI have shown that periods of deliberate rest following intense effort lead to improved retention and recall. People who engage in NSDR protocols after learning sessions perform better on memory tests, show faster reaction times, and exhibit increased accuracy in skill-based tasks. What's even more fascinating is that these benefits are not just cognitive, they extend to emotional and behavioral learning as well. When we learn something emotionally intense, the brain encodes it more deeply, but it also needs space to regulate and contextualize it. NSDR helps facilitate that emotional integration, allowing for clearer understanding and better regulation of responses over time. Another powerful application is in breaking and replacing habits. When we try to change a behavior, whether it's quitting smoking, adopting a new dietary pattern, or becoming more mindful, the brain is undergoing a form of rewiring. This process, known as synaptic pruning and strengthening, depends heavily on states of rest and recovery. NSDR provides the ideal internal environment for these changes to solidify. It doesn't just help you learn new information, it helps you embody new ways of thinking, reacting, and behaving. The quiet, restorative state allows the subconscious mind to catch up with conscious intentions, turning willpower into habit and repetition into identity. This capacity to enhance neuroplasticity is not limited to any one age group. Whether you're a teenager preparing for exams, an adult learning a new professional skill, or an older adult trying to maintain cognitive sharpness, NSDR provides a scalable, adaptable method to support brain function. And it does so without the need for external chemicals, stimulants, or long periods of downtime. You're essentially giving the brain a strategic window to do what it does best: organize, adapt, and evolve, by simply removing interference and creating the conditions for optimal processing. In many ways, NSDR is like pushing the save button on a file you've been working on. If you don't hit save, you risk losing the changes. Likewise, without deliberate periods of deep rest after learning, much of what you worked hard to gain can be lost to the noise and overload of daily life. NSDR helps preserve, enhance, and build upon your learning. It's not a replacement for practice, but a critical complement to it. The most elite learners, performers and innovators in the world use this principle, even if they don't all call it NSDR. They understand that the moments after effort are just as important as the effort itself. So when you think about accelerating your learning, think not only about how much time you're putting into the work, but also about how you're supporting that work once it's done. NSDR is one of the most efficient and scientifically grounded ways to do exactly that. It's a tool that transforms your brain's raw potential into lasting capability, and it does so quietly, effortlessly, and effectively. One of the most transformative benefits of non-sleep deep rest is its profound ability to reduce stress and recalibrate the autonomic nervous system. In our daily lives, stress has become a near constant companion. Whether it's the pressure of deadlines, interpersonal conflicts, financial strain, or simply the relentless pace of modern living, our nervous systems are often operating in a chronic state of activation. This prolonged state of stress, also known as sympathetic overdrive, wreaks havoc on our bodies and minds. It elevates cortisol levels, raises blood pressure, disrupts digestion, impairs sleep, and diminishes cognitive clarity. More importantly, it conditions the brain and body to remain in a reactive mode, where even small triggers can feel overwhelming. NSDR offers a powerful science-backed pathway out of this cycle. When you enter an NSDR protocol, your body begins to shift from the sympathetic nervous system, the branch responsible for fight-or-flight responses, to the parasympathetic nervous system, which governs rest, recovery, and regeneration. This transition doesn't happen through force or effort. It occurs naturally as your body responds to the cues of deep breathing, guided focus, and physical stillness. The breath begins to slow, the heart rate decreases, muscles unclench, and most importantly, the brain starts to produce slower wave patterns, moving from high-frequency beta activity to alpha and even theta waves. These are the same brainwave patterns associated with calm, creativity, and deep introspection. This neurological shift has a cascade of physiological benefits. The reduction in stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline is almost immediate. As these chemical messengers begin to subside, the body's inflammatory response diminishes, immune function begins to normalize, and internal organs, like the gut and the heart, begin to operate more harmoniously. From a biochemical standpoint, NSDR creates the ideal conditions for internal repair. But what makes it especially powerful is how it trains the nervous system to return to baseline more efficiently over time. In other words, the more you practice NSDR, the more quickly and reliably your body learns to deactivate stress responses. This ability to self-regulate is one of the most valuable skills a person can develop. In a world filled with unpredictable challenges, what separates those who thrive from those who burn out is not the absence of stress, but the ability to recover from it. NSDR is a direct training ground for this kind of recovery. It teaches the body how to relax, not through distraction or suppression, but through actual physiological recalibration. The more frequently you engage in this practice, the more sensitive your system becomes to the signals of rest and repair. It's like tuning an instrument. Over time, it plays more beautifully with less effort. What's especially important to understand is that NSDR doesn't require you to fight your thoughts, escape your emotions, or push through your stress. Unlike some forms of meditation that emphasize clearing the mind, NSDR allows thoughts to come and go without judgment. There's no pressure to perform. You're not trying to achieve a spiritual state or solve a problem. Instead, you're inviting your body and mind into a space of stillness where healing can naturally occur. This makes the practice incredibly accessible, especially for people who feel overwhelmed or mentally exhausted. There's nothing to do in the conventional sense. You simply follow the voice, breathe, and allow the process to unfold. The effect of this practice extends beyond the session itself. People who consistently use NSDR report feeling calmer throughout the day, more emotionally grounded, and less reactive in high-stress situations. This is because the brain begins to develop new patterns, new associations with calmness, new neural circuits that support self-regulation, and a more resilient threshold for external stressors. You may notice, for instance, that situations which used to trigger anxiety or frustration no longer have the same grip on your nervous system. That's not magic, it's neuroplasticity in action, the result of repeatedly giving your brain the experience of safety, calm, and recovery. This also makes NSDR a powerful tool for emotional regulation. Stress often manifests as emotional turbulence, irritation, sadness, anxiety, or even numbness. When the nervous system is in a heightened state, the emotional brain becomes more reactive. But when we engage in NSDR, we quiet that overactivity. The amygdala, the brain's fear and emotion center, becomes less reactive, while the prefrontal cortex, responsible for reasoning and reflection, regains control. This allows us to process emotions more clearly, respond to situations with greater intention, and avoid impulsive reactions that often escalate conflict or stress. And beyond the individual, the ripple effects of stress regulation are enormous. When one person becomes less reactive and more centered, their relationships begin to change. Communication improves, conflict diminishes, work becomes more focused, creativity expands. The energy that was once consumed by chronic stress becomes available for growth, learning, connection, and joy. This is the silent power of NSDR. It doesn't just help you feel better, it helps you be better in every domain of life. In essence, NSDR is like a reset button for the nervous system. It gives you the opportunity to step out of the noise, recalibrate your internal state, and return to the world with a clearer mind and a calmer heart. It teaches your body what it feels like to be safe, present, and at ease. And in doing so, it transforms the way you experience and respond to the inevitable stressors of life, not by eliminating them, but by empowering you to meet them with strength, clarity, and grace. One of the most intriguing and scientifically grounded effects of non-sleep deep rest is its capacity to enhance dopamine regulation, which plays a central role in motivation, focus, mood, and overall mental well-being. Dopamine is often misunderstood as a simple pleasure molecule, but in reality it's much more nuanced. It's the neurochemical that drives anticipation, goal-directed behavior, and a sense of meaning in action. When dopamine levels are well regulated, you feel energized, optimistic, and capable. When they're dysregulated, either too low, too high, or released in the wrong context, it can lead to burnout, distraction, impulsivity, and even depression. What makes NSDR so powerful is that it taps into the brain's natural mechanisms to balance and restore dopamine systems in a sustainable way. During states of intense focus or stress, the brain uses a substantial amount of dopamine. This is especially true when we're pursuing goals, engaging in problem solving, or navigating challenging emotional terrain. These activities are necessary and often productive, but they come at a neurochemical cost. If there's no recovery phase, dopamine levels can crash, leading to a kind of motivational hangover. You might recognize this as the moment when your willpower suddenly disappears, your ability to focus vanishes, or everything starts to feel emotionally flat or overwhelming. This is not just mental fatigue, it's a physiological signal that your dopamine system has been temporarily depleted. Non-sleep deep rest provides the perfect neurochemical counterbalance to this depletion. When you enter an NSDR state, the body begins to quiet the sympathetic nervous system and engage the parasympathetic system, shifting away from fight or flight and into rest and digest. This physiological transition reduces stress hormones and creates space for the brain to begin rebalancing its neurochemical environment. One of the key effects during this phase is the slow and steady replenishment of dopamine. Unlike the sudden spikes created by high-stimulus activities, such as scrolling on social media, eating sugary foods, or engaging in addictive behaviors, NSDR supports the gradual natural restoration of baseline dopamine levels. This is critically important because sustainable motivation depends not on chasing frequent dopamine highs, but on maintaining a healthy baseline from which the brain can signal reward and effort in a balanced way. In fact, research shows that practices which reduce stress and induce deep rest, like NSDR, allow the dopaminergic circuits in the brain, particularly in the prefrontal cortex and ventral tegmental area, to reset their sensitivity. This reset makes the brain more responsive to natural sources of pleasure and motivation in daily life, such as meaningful work, relationships, and purposeful challenges. What's even more fascinating is that NSDR doesn't merely restore dopamine, it trains the system to become more efficient over time. As you repeat the practice, the brain begins to anticipate the benefits, and this anticipation itself can trigger small increases in dopamine. In other words, your brain learns that rest is rewarding. This rewiring begins to shift your behavior in subtle but powerful ways. Instead of reaching for a quick fix when you're stressed or depleted, caffeine, distractions, or compulsive habits, you begin to lean into restorative practices like NSDR because your brain associates them with genuine recovery and clarity. That's neuroplasticity in action, reshaping your motivational landscape from the inside out. This becomes especially powerful in high-performance environments, whether you're a student, a professional, an athlete, or a creative, where sustained focus and drive are essential. NSDR helps maintain the dopaminergic balance that underlies consistent output without burnout. It allows you to work hard, recover deeply, and return to your tasks with renewed energy and perspective. This pattern of effort and recovery creates a virtuous cycle where you not only perform better but also feel better while doing it. You're no longer relying on artificial stimulation to get through the day. Instead, you're tuning your neurochemistry to support real engagement and authentic motivation. Another dimension to dopamine regulation through NSDR is emotional resilience. Dopamine is deeply linked to how we experience reward in relation to effort. When it's dysregulated, effort feels futile and rewards feel hollow. But when dopamine systems are balanced, even small wins feel meaningful and setbacks don't feel catastrophic. You regain a sense of agency, the feeling that your actions matter, that your goals are within reach, and that your efforts are part of a coherent, purposeful life path. NSDR supports this emotional framing by restoring the chemical equilibrium that allows the brain to interpret experience through a lens of growth rather than threat. There's also a growing body of evidence suggesting that deliberate rest practices like NSDR can reduce impulsivity, a common side effect of dopamine imbalances. When dopamine receptors are overstimulated by constant novelty or stress, the brain becomes less tolerant of stillness and more prone to seek immediate gratification. NSDR works against this tendency by training the brain to be comfortable in calm, low-stimulus environments. Over time, this builds patience, enhances focus, and improves the ability to delay gratification, all of which are essential traits for long-term success and well-being. What makes all of this so accessible is that NSDR requires no pharmaceutical intervention, no elaborate lifestyle overhaul, and no expensive technology. It's a natural method of tuning the brain's most important motivational system, one that's at the core of how we think, feel, and act in the world. Whether you're trying to stay consistent with a new habit, recover from burnout, enhance your focus, or simply enjoy your life more fully, NSDR gives you a tool to restore and optimize your brain's dopamine balance. And it does so not by pushing harder, but by pausing deliberately. This kind of deliberate pausing is not laziness, it's intelligent, strategic recovery. It's how you build a sustainable relationship with effort and reward. It's how you reclaim your mental energy, renew your emotional clarity, and re-enter your day with a deeper sense of alignment. In a culture that often confuses stimulation with progress, NSDR stands as a quiet revolution, a reminder that the deepest sources of drive and joy come not from chasing more but from restoring balance within. Non-sleep deep rest profoundly supports emotional regulation, and this may be one of its most underestimated yet life-changing benefits. In a world where emotional reactivity is often the norm, where people feel overwhelmed, short-tempered, anxious, or emotionally numb, the ability to regulate emotions is not just a personal asset, it's a survival skill. Emotional regulation is the process by which we monitor, evaluate, and adjust our emotional responses in ways that are appropriate for a given situation. It's not about suppressing emotions or pretending we don't feel what we feel. It's about having the awareness and the tools to manage those emotions constructively so we can respond to life rather than simply react. When the nervous system is overloaded due to chronic stress, lack of sleep, overstimulation, or emotional trauma, the brain becomes hyper-reactive. The amygdala, which is the brain's alarm system, becomes more sensitive, sending exaggerated threat signals even in non-threatening situations. Simultaneously, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for logic, planning, and impulse control, becomes less active. This imbalance can make us feel constantly on edge, easily triggered, or emotionally exhausted. We lose the capacity to pause, to reflect, or to respond in a measured way. Our emotions start running the show. This is where non-sleep deep rest enters as a powerful science-backed intervention. When someone engages in a 20-minute NSDR session, the physiological state of the body begins to shift dramatically. Breathing slows, heart rate decreases, and the entire autonomic nervous system moves from a sympathetic fight-or-flight dominance to a parasympathetic rest and digest state. This shift alone creates the foundation for emotional stability. The moment the body is no longer perceiving threat, even if the original stressor hasn't been resolved, the emotional centers of the brain begin to calm down. Cortisol and adrenaline drop. Blood pressure normalizes. Muscles relax. The entire organism enters a state of coherence, where signals from the body begin to inform the brain that safety is possible. What follows next is particularly fascinating from a neuroscience perspective. As the emotional brain becomes quieter, the prefrontal cortex becomes more engaged. This allows for reflective processing, the kind of thinking where you can reframe a situation, consider other perspectives, or recognize that a strong emotion, while valid, doesn't have to dictate your behavior. NSDR facilitates this reconnection between emotion and reason. It helps restore the communication lines between parts of the brain that were previously disconnected by stress. Over time, and with consistent practice, this translates into an increased ability to stay calm under pressure, to make thoughtful decisions in emotionally charged moments, and to break free from reactive patterns that no longer serve you. There is also something subtle but powerful that occurs during NSDR that contributes to emotional regulation, and that is the allowance of space. In modern life, people rarely give themselves space to just be, to not think, not perform, not produce, and not react. NSDR is a structured container for stillness. In that stillness, thoughts and feelings are allowed to arise and pass without resistance. You might find yourself remembering something painful, feeling a surge of sadness, or noticing an undercurrent of anxiety, and yet because you are in a state of deep rest, those emotions are held in a larger space of safety and calm. This neurologically is retraining your brain to process emotion in a non-reactive state. Over time, the brain starts to associate difficult emotions not with chaos or panic, but with calm observation and self-awareness. That's a massive shift. Many people also report that after an NSDR session, they suddenly see a situation more clearly. Maybe they had been angry or hurt, but now they feel compassion or understanding. Maybe they were feeling hopeless, but now a new possibility has emerged in their mind. These aren't just mood shifts. They are the results of neural reorganization. In the silence and safety of NSDR, the brain is free to integrate emotional experiences in a more cohesive, less fragmented way. And because there's no external stimulation, no distraction, the emotions are processed internally, which means they're more likely to be resolved rather than simply suppressed. NSDR is also a powerful antidote to emotional fatigue, which is a form of burnout that comes not from physical exertion, but from prolonged emotional strain. When someone is constantly managing responsibilities, dealing with conflict, or exposed to emotionally intense environments, their capacity to feel becomes blunted. They start to feel numb, or emotionally shut down. NSDR helps restore the nervous system's flexibility, the ability to feel deeply without becoming overwhelmed. It's like exercising the emotional muscle in a way that builds both strength and resilience. You become more open to life's experiences, but also more grounded within them. Over time, regular NSDR practitioners often find that their emotional baseline improves. That is, they don't just recover faster from emotional upsets, they actually feel more stable, content, and peaceful in general. This is likely because the nervous system is no longer in a state of chronic defense. When the body isn't constantly bracing for threat, the mind has more room for joy, connection, and creativity. And when strong emotions do arise, as they inevitably will, they no longer knock you off center. You have the inner capacity to hold those emotions, to learn from them, and to move through them with grace. Ultimately, emotional regulation is not about becoming emotionless, it's about becoming emotionally wise. It's about developing a relationship with your emotions where you're not enslaved by them, but informed by them. NSDR supports this wisdom, not through intellectual effort, but through the body. By creating the physiological and neurological conditions where clarity, calm, and courage can arise naturally. It's a practice that doesn't just help you feel better in the moment, it helps you build the emotional architecture for a more resilient, compassionate, and empowered life. Non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR, is not only a tool for recovery and restoration, but also a powerful enhancer of creativity and problem solving. In a culture that equates productivity with constant effort and mental output, we often forget that some of the most important breakthroughs, whether in art, science, business, or daily life, occur not during moments of intense concentration, but in the quiet space where the mind is free to wander, integrate, and make novel connections. NSDR creates that space. It acts as a gateway to the subconscious mind, where creativity is not forced but allowed to emerge naturally. When you're engaged in a focused task, your brain predominantly operates in what's known as the executive control network. This network is excellent for linear thinking, logical analysis, and goal-directed behavior. However, it is not particularly adept at generating new ideas or seeing problems from radically different perspectives. Creativity, in contrast, arises from a different part of the brain, the default mode network. This network becomes active when we are not focused on any particular task, when we are daydreaming, reflecting, or resting deeply. NSDR facilitates access to this default mode network by inducing a state of mental stillness, physical relaxation, and perceptual openness. In this state, disparate pieces of information that you've been exposed to, conversations, experiences, observations, questions, can come together in new and unexpected ways. What makes this so valuable is that creative insight often depends on a delicate balance between relaxation and alertness. If you're too relaxed, your mind drifts into sleep and the insight doesn't form. If you're too alert or stressed, your mind is locked into rigid patterns of thinking, unable to access lateral or intuitive pathways. NSDR helps you enter what researchers sometimes call a hypnagogic state, the transitional phase between wakefulness and sleep. In this state, the brain begins to produce alpha and theta waves, which are associated with deep relaxation, enhanced imagery, and increased associative thinking. Some of the greatest minds in history, from Salvador Dali to Thomas Edison, deliberately used this state to spark inspiration. They would hover on the edge of sleep, knowing that the mind, when unburdened by conscious effort, is most capable of creative synthesis. During an NSDR session, as the body settles into stillness and the mind quiets, the subconscious begins to surface. Thoughts may drift without attachment, memories may float in unexpectedly, and insights may arise seemingly out of nowhere. What's happening is that the brain is engaging in a form of integration, connecting previously unrelated pieces of data, emotions, and impressions into new forms. This is the essence of creativity, the ability to take what you already know and see it in a new light. NSDR fosters this by temporarily suspending the filters of critical judgment and habitual thought, allowing more fluid, open-ended mental processes to take over. Interestingly, this process is not just beneficial for artists or inventors, it's profoundly useful for anyone solving problems. Whether you're trying to navigate a complex interpersonal issue, develop a new business strategy, or make an important life decision, NSDR can create the internal conditions necessary for deeper understanding and innovative thinking. You may go into a session with no conscious intention to find a solution, and yet emerge with a new perspective, a clear next step, or even a full-fledged idea that feels like it came from a deeper part of your mind. That's because it did. It came from the part of your brain that sees the big picture, that integrates emotion and logic, and that thrives in spaciousness rather than pressure. This shift also supports long-term creative growth. Regular engagement in NSDR trains the brain to trust stillness, to value quiet as a fertile ground for insight rather than a waste of time. Over time, your mind becomes more adaptive, more capable of toggling between focused effort and expansive reflection. You become less dependent on external stimulation for ideas and more able to generate insights from within. This inner resourcefulness is incredibly empowering. It allows you to face challenges with confidence, knowing that you have access to a deeper reservoir of wisdom and imagination whenever you need it. Not because you forced it, but because you created the conditions for it to arise. What's more, NSDR also reduces the noise that often drowns out creative thought. The constant stream of digital input, societal pressure, and internal self-talk can crowd the mind, making it difficult for original ideas to take shape. In the quietude of NSDR, that noise recedes, the mind becomes like a still lake, and just as the surface of a calm lake can reflect images more clearly than a stormy one, a calm mind is better able to perceive subtle insights and possibilities. You begin to recognize patterns that were previously invisible, you hear the whisper of intuition more clearly, and you develop a more nuanced sensitivity to the emotional tone and texture of your thoughts. Another powerful aspect of creativity supported by NSDR is emotional insight. Many of our creative blocks are not intellectual but emotional, rooted in fear, self-doubt, or unresolved tension. When we are constantly in motion, these emotional patterns go unexamined and continue to influence our choices unconsciously. But during NSDR, when the nervous system is calm and the mind is open, emotions are processed gently without overwhelm. You may suddenly understand what's been holding you back. You may feel a release of an old narrative or come into contact with a new sense of purpose or direction. These shifts, though subtle, can be creatively transformative. They free up psychic energy that was previously stuck in inner conflict, allowing it to be channeled into expression, innovation, and movement forward. Ultimately, the connection between NSDR and creativity is not just about generating new ideas, it's about creating a new internal relationship with the mind itself. It's about realizing that some of the most important work you can do happens in silence, in stillness, in receptivity. That resting is not the opposite of creating but an essential part of it, that insight is not always something you pursue, sometimes it's something you receive. And that when you learn to trust the quiet spaces within you, you open the door to a kind of intelligence that goes beyond logic, an intelligence that is intuitive, integrative, and endlessly generative. NSDR